8 years ago, my husband left me and our children for a woman from a chat room. Last week, he knocked on my door with a proposal. My husband walked out on our family after typing "burb" to his online girlfriend. That was the last word I ever saw from him for 8 years. No divorce papers, no custody fight, just a blinking cursor. Then silence. 1 minute he was making waffles with our kids. The next he was in love with someone he'd never even met in person. A woman who sent him filtered selfies and called him her warrior poet on forums I didn't know existed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, from what life looked like before he vanished. I was 29, a stay-at-home mom with 2 kids under 5, a mortgage, and a husband who used to make me laugh so hard I snorted at the dinner table. His name was Sean. And when I say we were normal, I mean painfully, boringly, wholesomely normal. We had routines, grocery runs, Sunday breakfasts. We made decisions together. At least I thought we did. I trusted him with my life. I would have trusted him with yours too. But then the pandemic hit. He lost his job, got depressed. I didn't blame him. I tried to help, to carry more of the weight, to keep things afloat for the kids. And somewhere in that spiral, he found her. Some woman from a niche message board about gaming and free thought. She liked all his posts, called him brilliant, said his wife didn't deserve a mind like his. I didn't know any of this until after. At the time, all I saw was him staying up later, getting more withdrawn. He stopped coming to bed. His phone became a second limb. I thought he was burnt out. I thought I could fix it. Then one day I picked up our youngest from preschool, came home and found his closet half empty. No note, no message. Just a half-drunk coffee on the counter and the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. That night I got a text. Just 2 letters. Barba. And that was it. No follow-up. No response when I called. His phone was dead the next day. His email bounced. His sister didn't know anything, or pretended not to. His jobless bank account stopped moving. His name vanished from social media. He ghosted us, me, our kids, his whole damn life. And the worst part? I had no choice but to survive without him. The first night without Sean felt like freefall. I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, one hand on the baby monitor, the other gripping my phone. I kept checking it every few minutes, hoping, no, begging, that burb was some stupid joke, a glitch, something he'd explain in the morning. Morning came. He didn't. I tried calling, again. I messaged, I emailed. I even posted something vague on Facebook, hoping he'd see it. Nothing. I finally drove to his parents' house. His mom opened the door, saw my face, and immediately started crying. His dad looked angry, or maybe ashamed, I couldn't tell. All they said was, "We haven't heard from him either." And that was it. I was alone. Completely, terrifyingly alone. With a 3-year-old who kept asking, "Where's Daddy?" And a 5-year-old who thought it was her fault because she spilled juice on his laptop the day before. I didn't have time to break down. The mortgage didn't care that I'd been abandoned. Groceries didn't buy themselves. Daycare, gas, medical bills, they all stacked up like a quiet avalanche, pressing on my chest while I smiled for my kids and screamed into pillows when they were asleep. I applied for assistance, sold anything that wasn't nailed down, took overnight shifts cleaning offices, and spent my mornings making waffles with a fake smile. Every day was a loop. Pretend I was okay, survive, cry in the bathroom, repeat. People talk about trauma like it's loud, explosive, but it's not. Sometimes it's just standing in a grocery store aisle, staring at 2 kinds of cereal and realizing you don't have enough for either, and then putting on your brave face for your children who don't know any better. And the loneliness? It doesn't hit you all at once. It creeps in, quietly. A dinner with 2 empty chairs, a missed birthday, a school event where you're the only single parent. It wraps around your spine and hardens into something permanent. I stopped saying his name, not out of hate, but because it gave the kids hope every time I did. I couldn't let them keep hoping. Eventually we adjusted, as much as you can. I moved into a smaller place, found a better job, then a second one. My body ached constantly. I never had enough sleep. But I showed up. I pushed, I endured, and somehow 8 years passed. The kids grew, the pain dulled. I stopped looking over my shoulder every time I passed a man with his build. I stopped waiting for the door to open. I had built something from nothing, a routine, a home, a family. Not the one I started with, but one I earned. So when I opened the door last week and saw him standing there, holding a stupid little folder and wearing that same smug look I remembered from 1,000 nightmares, I didn't say a word. Because in that moment, all I could think was, why now? He stood at my doorstep like he had just come home from work. Not an ounce of guilt on his face. No hesitation, no shame. Just a faint, casual smile. Like this was the most normal thing in the world. Like he wasn't 8 years too late. I didn't invite him in. I didn't ask how he was. I didn't even move. I just stood there, waiting, heart steady, hands still, staring at the man who walked out of my life with 2 letters and returned like nothing had happened. And sure enough, it wasn't an apology. It wasn't closure. He had a proposal, not for the kids, not about parenting, not even about trying to fix the scorched ruins he'd left behind. It was financial. Apparently he'd made quite the mess over the years. Debts, bad investments, maybe something legal. He never said clearly. But the part that mattered? He needed to shift some things into my name. Temporarily, of course. Just a technicality, he called it. As if I hadn't spent the last 8 years cleaning up the wreckage of what he left behind. He said I had good credit now, that I could handle it, that I still carried his last name after all. Maybe I'd see the value in helping him out. It was surreal, hearing this man talk like we were still married in any way that mattered, like I owed him even a second of my time. There was no mention of our children, no curiosity about their lives, their milestones, their heartbreak, just paperwork, just signatures, just what I could do for him. He didn't even realize how absurd it was. He genuinely believed I would say yes. He thought he still had some power over me. That the same woman he left behind, the exhausted, frightened mother of 2, was still standing there, desperate for answers. But she wasn't. She hadn't been for years. So I did the only thing that felt right. I shut the door. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't need to. And standing in that hallway, alone again, but stronger than I'd ever been, I knew something even more disturbing. He wasn't done. A few days after I slammed the door in his face, he messaged me. It was short, measured, almost polite. He said he wanted to see the kids, just once, just to check in. For a full minute, I stared at the screen, completely still. Not because I didn't expect it, I did, but because I didn't know what scared me more, the thought of him seeing them or the thought of them actually wanting it. I thought about saying no, I really did. But then I thought about my kids, their right to know the truth, to make up their own minds. And a part of me, the broken, exhausted, overly reasonable part, wanted to believe, maybe, just maybe, they needed to see him for who he really was. So I said yes, under strict conditions, public place, supervised, no overnights, no sudden surprises, and absolutely no one-on-one. We met at a neutral cafe, midday, middle of the week. He showed up in a new shirt, like this was a job interview. He looked more tired than before, like whatever life he'd built without us hadn't worked out quite as beautifully as he planned. He smiled too hard, too often, like he knew the kids didn't recognize him and he was desperate to make them feel something. My son sat quietly, arms crossed. My daughter offered a half-hearted wave. It was clear from the start. They didn't know this man. Not really, not anymore. He asked surface-level questions, favorite subjects, favorite shows. He kept glancing at me for approval like I was grading him, but then came the shift. He started talking about the past, how things had fallen apart, how he had wanted to come back, but couldn't, how some people made it impossible. It took me a second to realize what he was doing. He was rewriting the story, not in an obvious way, not with bold accusations, but with enough vagueness to confuse 2 growing minds. He painted himself as a man caught in tragedy, a victim of circumstance, a father who had tried, really tried, but who had been kept away. By me. I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not sadness, not shock, pure red-blooded rage. Not for me, not this time. For them, because I had held this family together with bare hands and broken sleep. I had scraped together dignity out of humiliation. I had made sure they never hated him, never cursed his name. I carried his absence with grace he never deserved, and now he wanted to twist that into a weapon against me? I stood up. The kids followed, confused, caught in a moment they didn't understand yet. I told them we had to go, that we'd talk about it later. I didn't look at him. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction. And in the car, while the kids sat silently in the back, unsure of what they had just seen, I made a decision. This wasn't going to be a repeat of the past. He left me once. But this time, I was going to leave him behind on purpose. And this time, I was going to do it legally. After that cafe meeting, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was overwhelmed, not even because I was angry anymore, but because something inside me had shifted. For years, I had fought to keep my head above water. I had worked, cried, broken, and rebuilt, but always from a place of defense. I had always been responding to something, reacting, surviving. But now I felt something else entirely. Control. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just trying to keep things together. I was ready to take something apart. The very next morning, I called a lawyer. Not the family friend type, not someone I found in a Facebook group. A real one. Someone sharp, professional, and direct. I told her everything, from the RRB to the fake story he'd spun in front of our children. She didn't interrupt. She didn't flinch. When I finished, she leaned forward and asked me one question. Has he ever made an effort to pay child support or maintain legal contact? I shook my head. She smiled, but not kindly. Good. Turns out, disappearing for nearly a decade without formal custody agreements, without financial support, without even an attempt to co-parent, that doesn't sit well in court. In fact, she told me we had a strong case to not only terminate his visitation rights, but also file retroactive abandonment claims. At first, that idea made me uncomfortable. But then I remembered the way he spoke to them at the cafe, the way he lied, the way he tried to wedge himself back into their lives, not with honesty, not with humility, but with manipulation. He wasn't here for them, he was here for himself. So we got to work, and with every form I signed, I felt something uncoil in me, like an old muscle finally waking up. I wasn't just reacting anymore, I was defending, I was protecting, and this time, I was going to win. I thought that slamming the door would be the end of it, that cutting the meeting short, shutting down his proposal, walking away without a word, that would send the message. But men like Sean don't take silence as an answer. They hear it as an invitation to keep talking. He showed up again. This time, he wasn't smiling. He didn't have folders or a script. He looked cornered, like a man who had just learned he wasn't as untouchable as he thought. He knew. Somehow, through family or rumor, or maybe a lawyer's letter he didn't think I'd send, he found out I was taking legal action, that I wasn't going to let him slide back in and rewrite history. And he didn't take it well. He tried to act composed at first, accused me of being vindictive, said I was poisoning the kids against him, and that I was making things harder than they had to be. It was funny, in a tragic kind of way. 8 years of silence, 8 years of unpaid support, 8 years of pretending we didn't exist. And now I was the problem. He spoke like someone who genuinely believed he still held some piece of me, that if he raised his voice just right, tilted his tone the way he used to, he could put me back in that scared, dependent place I lived in years ago. But I wasn't scared. Not anymore. So I stood there, arms crossed, calm as stone, and said what I had rehearsed 1,000 times in my mind, but never out loud. I told him he didn't get to play the victim. I told him that walking out wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. That every Christmas he missed, every school photo he wasn't in, every moment our kids reached for someone who wasn't there, that was on him, not me, that I hadn't poisoned them. He had, with absence, with silence, with a cowardice so profound it turned into their bedtime stories, not because I told them, but because they remembered. And the only reason they didn't hate him was because I spent years swallowing my pain so they could love the ghost of a father who didn't love them enough to stay. His face changed. The anger dropped. The confidence cracked. He tried to speak, to defend, to plead. But I didn't need to hear it. Because there's something that happens when you outgrow the person who once held you down. Something irreversible. You stop needing closure. You stop needing justice. You just want distance. So I turned around, closed the door one final time, and this time I didn't wonder if he'd come back. Because now I knew. It wouldn't matter if he did. It took 3 months to get the court date. 3 months of silence from him. Not a single message, call, or attempt to explain himself. Just silence. The one thing he'd always been good at. When the day finally came, I wore a gray blazer that I hadn't touched in years. It still smelled faintly like stale coffee and printer paper, a reminder of who I had to become when he left. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined. Colder, less dramatic. There were no gasps, no gavel slams, just the dull echo of footsteps and the shuffle of paperwork. He was already there when I walked in, sitting at the defendant's table, fidgeting. He looked smaller somehow, or maybe I had just grown. He didn't look at me, not once. The judge reviewed the case like it was any other Thursday, like it wasn't the unraveling of nearly a decade of abandonment packed into a folder. My lawyer laid everything out, the financial records, the proof of disappearance, the lack of support, the absence of contact. Each document was a brick, and together they built the wall that separated Sean from any claim to decency. Then came the decision. The judge's voice was flat, neutral, but his words hit like a wrecking ball. Sean was ordered to pay backdated child support for every year he was gone, with interest, penalties, legal fees. The number made him flinch, and that wasn't all. The judge declared him legally absent for the duration of his disappearance. That meant no shared custody, no visitation rights, no decision-making authority. He wasn't just out of our lives emotionally. He was out legally too. He tried to argue, of course. Said he had mental health struggles, couldn't find work, didn't know where to start. But none of it mattered, because nothing erased the 8 years we spent waiting. The gavel came down like a whisper. One word. Granted. And just like that, it was over. But the strange thing, I didn't feel triumphant. There was no cinematic swell of justice. No grand feeling of revenge served cold. There was only quiet, steady, settled. He stormed out. I stayed in my seat a while longer, watching the courtroom empty. It was done, and for the first time since he left, I didn't feel like I was standing on broken glass anymore. I felt like I was on solid ground. It's been a year since the court case, a full year of silence. Real, legal, documented silence. He hasn't paid a cent, and honestly, I stopped expecting him to. The debt is on paper, but paper doesn't raise children, and I've learned not to hinge my future on what he might someday do. My lawyer says enforcement will come eventually, garnished wages, frozen accounts, but I'm not holding my breath. Instead, I focused on the life I built without him. The kids are older now, sharper. My daughter is obsessed with architecture. My son wants to build computers, and they know who he is, or was, and they've made their peace in the quiet, careful ways kids do. They've stopped asking questions, and I've stopped needing to protect him in my answers. We talk honestly now, about abandonment, about resilience, about how love isn't measured by blood but by presence. As for me, I'm not who I was. Not the woman who folded laundry with a lump in her throat, hoping he might call. I've built something. I started a small bookkeeping business, from home at first, while the kids were in school, and now with an office I rent in town. It's not glamorous, but it's stable. It's mine. The funny thing, when the first partial payment from the court ruling finally arrived, a few $100s scraped off whatever paycheck he couldn't hide, I didn't touch it. I opened an account. Every cent from that judgment goes there. It earns interest, slowly, quietly. It's not revenge, it's tuition. One day when my daughter applies to college or my son gets accepted into an engineering program, I want to tell them, this is what we turned pain into, a future. We don't talk about him much anymore, not because we're avoiding the topic, but because we're finally living lives where he doesn't show up in every shadow. There are still hard days, nights when the weight of doing it all alone feels like too much, but they're fewer now, softer. And sometimes, in the middle of the noise and mess of our very real, very ordinary life, I catch a glimpse of who I used to be. Then I look at the people we've become, and I know he didn't take us down with him. We rose anyway.